So it taught me a lot about ethical lending and doing the right thing for the customer in all ways, shapes, and forms, and coming from that small banking environment. Fast forward to today, I work for CrossCountry Mortgage, which is obviously one of the largest retail lenders. I've been there for about 6.5 years. It looked a lot different at the company when I joined, but I wanted to work among the Eagles, kind of so to speak. There are some great people that I knew were at CrossCountry Mortgage, and I had the opportunity to learn from them. And so it was a really good decision to go and work there. I have my own branch. I have one loan officer that's a partner more or less now. He started as a team member learning, at the very basic level on my team. But now he is a 100% partner in everything that I do. And, that's a part of, being able to do what I'm doing now too.
Awesome. So to start at a community bank.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, 2002, that's a pretty, what is that, 22 years? Now working for one of the largest mortgage companies. Mm-hmm. That looks, smells, tastes completely different. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming you may have had a couple stops in between.
Yeah. The first, the bank that I work for had gone through some hard times in the 2008, 2009 crisis. Our mortgage team was doing really well during that time. We had a large portfolio. We were able to refinance them multiple times. It was easier to do a loan, less seasoning times back then. And we could, because we had the money, we could do interesting things as a bank that made sense. But that bank eventually sold, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall. It was like one morning I went in and the rates were from Freddie Mac 1% higher, like in the actual rate, for the same pricing. It was like they were kind of telling us like we were maybe as liquid as we needed to be. And so I was, it was at the time I'd gotten married, and my husband, I met him. He had 2 beautiful children already, Gavin and Megan, and they were pretty young at the time. And, as we got married and we're building a life in a little bit of a different area too, it just kind of made sense to go with a correspondent lender. And being at a correspondent lender for a little while, I learned a ton there. Went back to a credit union because I felt like, I want to go back to kind of what I know and feel and like. And then after I went back to the credit union, I was like, they have so many limitations, and their management sides with the ops team all the time. And you're like, we can't change something effective immediately all the time. Yeah. In our business with our clients and the realtors, and, it just doesn't work like that. Yeah. So I think, I was looking for that company that would, have really the bells and whistles to support the business I knew how to run and grow and develop and acquire. They could just be a great fulfillment center and make me look good, not screw up, when they service the loan. That's another thing too. Companies sometimes, it's good to be at a servicer, but sometimes that can be a bad experience for your past clients. And that can be a bad experience for you than the loan officer, or your realtors have their loans with you, and that's a bad experience for them. Yeah. It's just, learning and growing, and ultimately I found that, I wanted to be at a place that had the best of both worlds, some correspondence, some direct lending, some portfolio products, and some broker options too, if you really want to go into that. So.
And when you joined CrossCountry, what did that look like then? Because it was much smaller, right? Or what was it that attracted you to CrossCountry? Or did you have a branch in between then that you migrated over? Or?
Yeah, so I actually had gone to Company Finance of America that's no longer around anymore, and opened up a location in the Twin Cities with another person and developed a sales team there. I think we had like 13 or something loan officers when I left, and a couple underwriters, closer, ops manager, the whole thing.
Doing it all within the branch.
Yep, and cool. Ultimately, I wanted to be in business with people that I could learn more from and wouldn't keep me just below them. And that's something that happens a lot to women in our industry. And that's okay. It's, it's kind of, I'm not like one of those women that's mad at, that or anything. I've dealt with that since I was a pilot, being a girl at 19 years old, and some guys like, you're going to fly my airplane, yeah, so I looked for some good people to learn from. Like the first person that brought me into mortgage was an amazing mentor of mine, Val, and so I looked to another woman that I wanted to learn a lot from. And my market was Lisa Wells, and so she was at CrossCountry. I had just gotten to CrossCountry a little bit before I had joined them, and it just made a lot of sense for me to make the move and learn as much as I could from somebody like that too in the business. And from there I've been in the core and things like that have really elevated my game.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so you highlighted or talked a little bit about being a female loan officer.
Yeah.
I personally think that they have a huge upper hand, and some of the best loan officers I know and that I've trained with and like are some of the best loan officers in my opinion. But I'd be curious to get your take on it.
I'm curious on why you feel like females have an upper hand.
Yeah.
Because there's not as many men, or it's not as many. There's so much more men in the industry, so they stand out.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, sometimes there's like a care factor to like when you're doing a loan to just have someone there to like help walk you through it. I don't know. To me, that style, I don't know. It's like the caring aspect or like the emotional aspect of like, hey, it's sure there's a lot of numbers, but we have this like emotional connection too that we can help walk you through it. And it is because it's an emotional.
I was just looking for your background on your thought process, because I think there's a much steeper hill to climb, but once you get to the top, it can be very, very fruitful because there's fewer, and there's a lot of, I feel like, female real estate agents that want to work with another female.
Sure.
So I think there's that aspect, but I'm really curious on your take, maybe what some of the difficulties were, whether it was barrier of entry or maybe some examples of where you felt like maybe you weren't treated fairly. I'm curious on some of that.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I don't think like as a woman you have an unfair advantage in life at all. Like I think women can do anything, be anything that they want to be, and my daughter is proof of that. She's in the Army right now, and she's already a military police officer, and she's getting her starting her canine training right now. So, I mean, I think, go out there and be what you want to be. And I think that we do offer something unique to the marketplace because there is, sometimes a little bit more care, not always, right? And I'm sometimes maybe a little bit more direct than a lot of women too. And I think that you run into that a lot too with very successful women in our industry. Like they're not necessarily, they're more direct in their business focus, and that's okay. I think we bring a special something to the industry because we're moms and we kind of look after people a little bit like they're our children a little bit, and good and bad, right? Because it's maybe made me be a lot less good leader in some ways, or less of a profitable manager, because I cared about employees when it slows down to just like lay somebody off without any reason except for our P&L doesn't look great. So I think that can be good and bad sometimes. And I think there was always, somewhat of an advantage that I wasn't afraid to use it, within a realtor. Like, do you have a strong female that you work with to help, somebody that's asking for a female loan officer wants to specifically work with somebody or would prefer a female. And that was always an angle that I could get, in with or get a conversation around at least. Because it is, you have a divorce situation and sometimes the wife doesn't trust the husband anymore, and there's just some things that you can't really do, and you're trying to help the client in the best way that they're emotionally ready to take on. And, you want somebody that's going to match that. And granted, I'm not good for every client either. Like I've learned that along the way. I don't want every client anymore.
So I've worked with several large builders that are doing hundreds of homes a year, and I'm surprised at the amount of times they've vocalized they want a female loan officer on the preferred lender team, because every client that comes to the door, they want to be able to adapt and make sure that those clients are being sent to someone that makes them feel comfortable. So I think there's actually a need. I wish there was more females in the marketplace as originators, right? I mean, the op side, it seems to be obviously lopsided, more females than males, and then on the originating sales side, the exact opposite.
Yeah, and I think that, there's companies that are starting to pay attention to that, and I know that there's a lot of females that came to CrossCountry Mortgage and kind of looked around and said, hey, there's too many men in leadership here, we got to change that. And so I think that it is changing. A lot of companies are noticing, like, it's good to have a mix of everything, right? It makes a company stronger. And really, it makes country stronger, like all this, like we can all learn from one another, and we have different talents and strengths that we bring to the table. So
yeah, 100%. Well, let's pivot a little bit to so you're a branch manager still now.
Yes.
Is that because you're in Florida, kind of, there's like a hybrid. Walk us through like how that looks, and then I want to get to as well, like how then your team looks and how that flows with you being
in an Airstream.
Full time in an Airstream. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still learning about that. No, it's good. I think in 2021 we did a massive renovation on our home, and I always wanted to do that, and we did it. And during that, we found out we couldn't live in our home for a majority of it, and we were going to rent places, and kind of, it was COVID, so our kids were in high school and could do everything remotely with little input from us, and everybody's pretty cool with we're all working remote situation for the most part. Zoom obviously was powerful in staying in front of my team, having good people hired, and I think during all this time too, I was being coached by the core training, so there was no option for me not to have, be hitting the goals, hitting the numbers. I was still doing all the work. It was just remote, and ultimately our culture adapted to that somewhat. When our kids left home, and it was like, well, they're both in the military now, and they're more than likely not going to be coming home a lot to Minnesota. I was like, well, really liked being in Florida, and my husband had bought a commercial property there as well, and so we decided to sell the home in Minnesota and have an Airstream to be able to be where our kids are going to be, because they're moving around quite a bit for their careers with the military.
And your odds of them coming home are a little bit higher in Florida than Minnesota.
Well, our daughter is, our daughter's expressed, a few times that she thinks that she would prefer to live there. Now, now that they had a little taste of that, they're like, we really like that. So, of course they do, right? West Palm Beach, Florida, who wouldn't like that? But no, it was, you have to give yourself permission. You're not the same person at all places in your business. And I didn't realize this until like the last year. And I'd gone through our kids leaving home, the loss of a family member. Obviously, the business has been like, what, what's going on? The rates are going down a year from now. You're saying that, to your clients, and they still haven't gone down. This stuff, and having to let go of people constantly and make adjustments to your process continually is just like, we have to realize that it's okay to be in a different place now. And it's okay to go back to, recreating the wheel. And we always have to, in our process, like I said, as it changes. So it's okay to recreate the wheel for what's going to work for you. And I had to start making some decisions around that and say, here's what's going to work for me. And I still ultimately want to stay in the business to help change lives. I feel like home ownership vastly changes a family's life and wealth and everything. And so I do believe in that and want to help still mentor and influence the younger generation to do the right thing for them, the company, the client, like, all the things. Like it's something that, even if I don't want to be the top salesperson anymore, like I still want to help the clients that I've helped for 20 years and their children and those things. And still leave a legacy on the industry.
Beautiful.
I love it.
So when we were talking, well, two things that stood out. So you said it's okay to be in a different place. And I feel like with the market changing, and we've talked about this on a previous podcast of, the market was just on fire with historically low rates, COVID. And so you get used to like a certain production level, you're breaking records every month. And some people tie that volume or that unit, that success to like their personality or their person,
Their
their
self-worth.
identity, self-worth.
Yeah.
And so with that having changed now, and maybe, you can talk personally about it, or if the loan officers that are around you, but I've seen that where it's really impacted producers, and it's like, man, what's going on? Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, what do I need to change? But maybe I would just be curious to kind of hear your thoughts around like how you came to peace with the stuff you're doing and changing and everything within your business.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have faith, and not everybody has that, have something like that, but have an outlet, have a friend that you take a walk with and you're super transparent with, and can be vulnerable. Sometimes we have to leave our ego at the door. It's not easy to do that in our industry, where we have to like be in front of camera and look good and, show off the listing and like all these things. And I'm on TV, also, and so that can be hard to battle. But, affirmations, daily affirmations. There was my very first coach in the core training when I was in level 3 was Jennifer Hernandez. And she literally made me type 10 affirmations and put them in my shower. Laminate them, put them in my shower, and people would see them, my kids, and they'd be like, what the heck is the, I got made fun of, like the whole thing. But like literally that stuff all came true in my business. You have to tell yourself where you're going, who you are, what you will be, because the world will tell you a lot different story. So I think that that's a really big part of it, is your mental game, your mindset, and however that works for you. Like, I like to get up earlier. When I do, I can have that time to like really make sure I'm in a good mental space. If I'm running out the door and don't have everything I need, it's just, not the right start to the day.
She just described me.
And trust me, I'm not notorious for being early to
Well, but you talked about how I forget the way that you phrased it, but be okay with how your career looks different. You're progressing, you're changing, right?
Yeah.
Sean and I have young kids at home. Like, there's no way I'm getting ahead of it, and it's so hard to have a routine. My routine almost needs to start when I get to the office, because it's so hard to do it at home with 4 young kids. So, it took me a couple of years to kind of come to an acceptance with that and be okay that I can't get to the office at 7 a.m. like I used to, because I used to get my most productive hours were from 7 to 9. Well, now my most productive hours are from 3 to 5.
Right.
And
you can have that time before you go home.
And I kind of look forward to someday having those productive hours back to being 7 to 9. But
come back.
I'm in the eye of the storm right now with young kids. So anyway, it just hit me.
I think anybody that has kids in this industry battles that, and you want to be there for your kids, and really you do blink, and all of a sudden one day you're like, they're gone, like officially, and so try and enjoy that, even though I called it like the rat race, so like every day is the same, and but you have to find what works for you. And I just told this to my team member too, like I think about like my best ideas for like video content and stuff are when I'm driving, or like at certain times, so that's when I put it in my calendar, to do that. You can't force an activity into something that's not going to work for your life. I've tried to do that many times, like, I'm going to do this and this, and it just doesn't happen because I'm not in a place where it's going to happen.
Right.
That was a big part of me making this transition too, is like I was in between Minnesota and Florida and doing that, whole thing for 3 years. And, during that time, my husband was getting more established in Florida, and I was getting more established in Minnesota in some ways. And that's not good either, So you have to be careful, especially when you're married, to protect your marriage and do the right thing for your marriage. And, literally telling people no, and just creating the right expectations. Like, I'm not going to be in Minnesota, but I have Dawson there who works for me, who is amazing and wants to work until 10 p.m. and answer every email on the weekends and send you 5,000 mortgage coaches. And I meet with him every single day, like we talk every day. I'm going to know what's going on. I am telling him, like, let's lock that one today, So, but, it's a different level of involvement now, and I've become okay with that because I have to prioritize what's the most important.
Go ahead.
I'm curious about the Airstream.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges of working on the road? Because it's not just a matter of Minnesota and Florida. It's a little different ball game when the quarters are a little bit tighter, right? What have you had to pivot with the way that you operate with the Airstream?
So the first week it was a marriage fight about the Wi-Fi, because it was like, you stay at a campground that has Wi-Fi, but their Wi-Fi is not really reliable, and then your phone isn't always going to work in every location. So I mean, it presents challenges. So we end up finding this new technology, TravelFi, that pings a bunch of different cell towers. So they use multiple cell towers across the country, and that way you're guaranteed to have the best kind of ish reception as long as you're within cell reception. We're pretty much staying within cell reception. We had never been campers before. I mean, I grew up on a farm, not afraid to be outdoors and, do stuff like that at all. But we just have never done anything like this. I remember one time we were driving down to the Keys and I saw like all these campers in a parking lot. I was like, oh, I'll never do that. And I'm doing that, like here, right in St. George, just literally in a parking lot. There's barely any trees. I'm like, what am I doing? But no, it's great. It's actually like very liberating. It's teaching me a whole bunch of new lessons. I'm reconnecting. You get to a place in your career where you're doing 200 plus loans and you have a big team and all these things. And it's like, you don't get to take as much time to connect with people in some respects, right? Because you're trying to manage it all, and it's a lot to manage in a short amount of time if you're trying to have a life too. I just lost my train of thought completely. But when you transition, I totally lost my train of thought. I apologize. I was saying, like,
So coming back to the streamline, I'm curious though, have you had to change any of your processes with your team? I could just see having multiple people in the streamline trying to do their own. Maybe I should ask, what does your husband do for work? Is he working at this point?
He's an entrepreneur. Yep. Okay. So, and both of his businesses are completely online sales. He can be remote too. So
he's on the phone. He's doing Zoom. How have you had to adjust the way that you operate on the mortgage side, operating out of the Airstream?
Yeah. So I think expectations on the front end are a big part of that. And like, now I'm telling people, I'm on the road and reconnecting with people. So now I've got customers, that I helped fit 10 years ago, reaching out like, we're going to get a travel trailer, a camper van, and we're going to be traveling across the country in a few years when our kids leave the house too, and that's been really neat to like get back to that level of connection and staying in front of people again. Both of us working out of the space can be a little bit complicated. My husband's a lot of messages and Facebook ads and stuff like that he is generally like getting his business from. So his calls are usually to make a sale, and I can be respectful of that. From my standpoint, I just I set the expectation on the front with the client. Like, I'm traveling across the country. Our kids are both in the military, both in really stressful AITs right now. And so just so you know, I'm going to know what's going on, but I'm not going to be a part of every conversation anymore. But as soon as, I have that initial conversation and tee up my partner and he's reaching out, I'm still following up with them. We create a group text thread that I'm involved in. That way I'm seeing everything. Frankly, I've been on many vacations where, I've worked, so it's more or less kind of like that. I've been out in the middle of Caribbean Ocean working, what I mean?
And Sean and I have too. You can't really turn it off.
No.
But when you go on vacation, you're managing the pipe that's contract close. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, how are you prospecting on the road?
Well, I haven't in the last 30-ish days. Let's just be honest. Outside of personal connections, and I would say that's where I want my business to be focused more, is continuing to help the past clients that I have. Yeah. And I've been fortunate because being in the business as long as I have in the same market that I have, realtors that have been around for a really long time know that I get the deal done without drama, on time, it's going to work out. So that helps. And then, from the meeting standpoint, that's mainly being managed with my team members, unless it's a family member or something, a little bit more of a hand-holdy situation, a unique situation he doesn't know how to handle. I might be involved in the client meetings and making adjustments to be on those Zooms. But another thing that's been a little bit complicated is, being on different time zones and trying to navigate that, but it's...
I guess I'm curious, and being in the business as long as you've you're probably already getting a lot of leads from your existing
Correct.
real estate agents, and a database is probably quite large. Kind of nice to be established at that point. And
Yeah,
be able to
exactly.
do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for a really long time and helped, like I said, sometimes 200 plus people a year. So that's a lot of people's lives to touch, and we keep in touch with them after closing. And I try and own their problem like it's my problem, and help them through that, even if it's not making me money, if it's a servicing issue, if they're needing to do a home equity line of credit that we can't help them with or whatever. So
walk us through like step by step on like lead flow. So a realtor, hey, they want to buy a house. Walk us through like what that looks like start to finish now being in an Airstream.
Great. Yeah, so teeing it up, hey, thanks so much for sending us your business, just so that most of them already know what I'm doing, and they already have been working with my team member, and sometimes it goes directly to him and not to me before it's coming to me.
So your realtors know sometimes, hey, you can trust my partner.
It's getting better.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't happen overnight. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And and he has a different angle with them too, but lead comes in, one of us is responding and teeing it up. We try and get a face-to-face meeting scheduled with the client. If that can't happen face-to-face because of my location, because his location, whatever, we're doing it by Zoom, to understand, hey, what's brought you to the decision to buy a home today? We want to hear their motivation first, understand where they're at, how were we referred, were we a strong referral? Were we given, were they given 3 names? You kind of want to know all that stuff on the front end before you get too far. In that conversation, we're getting a lot of intel about where they're looking, shopping, what their goals are, what's important to them, right? You want to listen to what's important to your client on the front end. That very first job at that community bank, I wish I still had a copy of it, but we had the sales tool that walked you through like the 5-step sales process. And if anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, go and brush up on it, listen to some YouTube. It's like about, you have to understand the client's goals first, ask questions, confirm their like you have to go through this process that emotionally follows where they're at, and then continually show up in that emotional journey with them, all the time. So doing a strong handoff like that. And sometimes I'm on that initial meeting and leading the charge, and sometimes he is. But we have a daily team meeting, every meeting, same time, whether I'm in XYZ time zone or not, and sometimes I'm not very well prepared for the, not dolled up for that meeting with him. But it's like we look at the locks, we look at the pipeline, we talk about the new apps, the new leads, where's he at for his calls and numbers. Ultimately, we're tying back to my leads over the last several years, calling them to revamp people. So it's once the lead comes in, it's creating that warm bond with them and getting them into our process and almost selling them before we're getting them to fill out the application online.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then they're pre-approved, right? You go through the pre-approval. Are you kind of both sharing that a little bit too? And then from there, they're pre-approved, back to the agent, putting an offer, and then what does contract to close look like? Are you still doing that? Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually a part of every contract call, and I do say that to clients, like, I'm going to be involved. Like, I'll be on when you go under contract because, hey, we might pre-approve you for 5 different options, but what you get under contract, what is important to you about that home, and how long you think you can be there based on all those variables, like that's going to matter with what we set up for that mortgage loan for you. And, it's worthwhile to do a meeting again once client goes under contract and make sure that we're all in agreement under what the rules are, what the timelines are, how we're setting up the loan, what the expectations from everybody are, and just ensures that the process goes very smooth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like you're still pretty involved with everything, but just at a distance where you can kind of step away if you need.
Yeah.
Is that kind of the ultimate goal with this?
It sounds like to me it's the it's the team member, it's the partner that makes that go.
Correct. Yeah, definitely you have to find the right people. And my team partner, loan partner, that's kind of with me now at the bitter end, through the last few years, is a family member. He's young. He was going to go to college to be a loan officer. I'm like, well, you don't need to go to college for that to be a mortgage loan officer, but, you can. But if you want him hiring, he ended up coming to work for me. And so I've mentored him to really where he's at in his career at this point and helping him get deals. And I want him to have the branch at some point. Cool. I'm okay with, having a less of an owner, like a less position now to have legacy because, none of us want to work forever.
Right. That's managing your specific pipe. Do you have other LOs outside of that?
I don't. I just have just him. Yeah. Okay. And I haven't really, in the last 6.5 years, been at CrossCountry, haven't developed a sales team outside of myself. Mm-hmm. I did sales management for a couple of places. It ultimately burned me out a little bit from doing it for a little while because I was in the place where I wanted to be that number one too. And it's like you compete your time a lot with how much you devote to your problems and you know what I mean? It's always a struggle. And so, I recruited people that are still at the companies that I recruited them to, from however many years ago, which is cool. And, it's something that, I want to help continue to mentor the next generation of people that wants to get into this industry and do it the right way. And, I think a lot of people get in, they think it's going to be easy money, and it's really not. We have times where the money is easier.
I have a question on what advice you would give. You have managed your own production. You have managed a team with your own production. You have managed other LOs.
Production.
When it comes to managing, if you have a young loan officer that has management in their sights, they're interested in it, what advice would you give to them? What considerations and perspectives should they have before becoming a branch manager?
That's a good question. I think that they have to really know their own numbers before they try and manage other numbers, if that makes sense. If they don't know how many leads they get every single week, every single month, every single year, how many deals, what their conversion rates are from lead to application, from application to closing, etc., all those things. Like, there's no way that you can lead other people if you can't do that for yourself. So learning that, whatever it takes you to learn that, but so often it involves, I think, getting a little bit more organized than sometimes we are in our industry, and really hiring a coach or something like that to keep us organized and accountable. I think knowing how to hire and fire people is something that I had to really learn too along the way to be a more more effective manager. I think it's easy in our industry to hire the wrong person, because it feels like we're salespeople. So when we meet somebody like us, we think it's great, but they're not always what we need. We need people that are a little bit, just like we're talking about, we need women in the workplace. We need a bunch of different personalities in our team or in our branch or whatever to make it all work, and the different motivation levels too, right? Like, I'm fortunate right now, I'm doing this, but I have somebody who is like wanting to do as much business as he possibly can. And so I'm like, cool, well, if I just, compensate you a little bit on all my deals, is that cool with you? And it gives you more realtors to talk to every week and, deals to be a part of and opportunities to get in doors and everything like that. So.
Yeah, with the hiring and firing, have you found kind of a recipe for success on that? Or is it, because sometimes someone can just ace an interview and you can do a disc test or do like a personality test, but sometimes it's just like until they get into it, you just don't know. And that kind of goes back to what you mentioned earlier on the profit and loss. If like you're trying to give them another chance, or you're just like, they're going to change. I'm still learning that and struggling with that. It's like, I just don't know any best practices or anything on that.
I think for hiring people, hiring by attraction is always best versus out of desperation. So, like, you have to think about when you meet people that you really, like, they're young and hungry, or they're, like, a really good server or something like that. Like, be like, hey, have you ever thought about working in the mortgage industry? You know, just, like, throw it out there. I have a client that I actually just emailed this morning about some escrow shortage stuff, and was like, hey, I remember we talked about you being a mortgage. Have you ever thought more about that? You know, it's like, so you're just putting it out there. You know, we have I think getting a virtual bench is something that a lot of people talk about. Successful.
A what?
A virtual bench.
Virtual?
Hiring bench.
Virtual bench.
Meaning you're always hiring. So
Yeah.
if you meet somebody today, take them through a hiring process. Like, meet them, get them interested, send them a job description, get them to an interview, and, you know, get them to be like, right now we're going to, you know, maybe not make a decision, but we're going to be in the next few months. We want to make sure we have the right people available. And when that comes up, would you be, you know, like, so, I mean, you want to have people that you can kind of already have.
That you've already vetted.
Yeah, waiting in the wings for you.
A virtual bench. I love that. I'm taking that one home.
And I did that, and that was something that I did. I kind of already was, you know, identifying people, like, I want to go to them if I need to hire somebody. So that was something I worked with through the core. I met Manesh Boxy. If you don't know Manesh Boxy, he's a great disc expert. He charges like $100 to do a profile review of your disc personality, meaning, like, what are you hiring them for, and are they going to naturally be a good fit for that role?
We probably have a lot of listeners out there that don't know what the core is. Could you give just a brief overview of what the core is?
Sure. The core training is a high-level coaching organization for mortgage and real estate. It is, you have to make so much money and close so much business to be a part of the core, to be accepted by their highest level of coaching. I'm a 5-year graduate of their highest level coaching program. I had to apply like 3 times to get in. It's not like one of these, like, send us $9.99, you're in. You know, it's like you have to kind of qualify or get qualified to be in and
You have to
show
submit
up.
a W-2.
You have to submit your tax returns. You have to be
look at
interviewed by
everything.
Rick Ruby, who, if you ever listen to him.
I love when he yells at me.
I love Rick Ruby. I have a personal, like, I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for Rick Ruby and what he's done for me. And not only him, every coach I had at the core. And that's what's unique about that is every coach in the core has to make over $1 million per year. They have to be ahead of you in their business. And they have to be active in their business too, so they're active and employed by the core, but also active as loan officers, running the same problems as you are, dealing with all the same circumstances. So the core training is, it's like a coaching program. It's accountability, right? The information is always free. You can go to YouTube, get all the information. You can get everyone's forms, but until somebody makes you do it, it can be not really impact your business.
So the coaching program has been a huge part of your success.
Yeah, definitely. It took me to the highest production that I've had, and that was, in really good years as well. But it gave me a hiring process. It gave me a firing process. It gave me structure in my business that nobody's really teaching us as loan officers. And I learned that from other people doing the same things, ahead of me in their business. They've paved the way. They've already, blood, sweat, and tears through it, and, sometimes we struggle for years trying to figure out the problem that they could tell us how to fix tomorrow, So when you elect into a group like that, there's a lot of core coaches that are working at CrossCountry as well. You have access to those people to help you grow. And yeah, there's accountability to you growing.
Yeah, I feel like, from your journey from start to finish, by hiring a coach or getting in with like high level people, it just accelerates that potential to get to that end destination.
Yeah, you get to the destination just a heck of a lot faster, right?
Yeah.
Than you would if you didn't have a coach.
I mean, a big part of it has to be what you want, right? You might want to make a lot of money, but if you're not willing to put in all the work or surrender to what they're telling you to do, then don't hire a coach, because you'll just be wasting your money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the lead system that you don't ever use, or don't call the people, like it's happened to all of us along the way, frankly. Some realtor convinces you to do it and you think it's a great idea for your business, but it's not.
Sean has had a huge influence on me, encouraging me to get more involved with the coaching programs. He's just been a great mentor in that aspect. I originated for 10 years without a coach. And then once I started actually engaging with a coach, I was like, man, why did I wait so long? So anyone listening who's on the fence, who's thought about it, who's looked into it, make the commitment. It will accelerate.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, one of my favorite coaches or favorite realtors in the Twin Cities, old friend of mine, Jay Fletch, is the coach with the Core as well, realtor coach. He'd say real estate's one of the only jobs that people quit their 9 to 5 to work 80 hours a week. Like they give up this like thing to think that they have all this freedom, and all of a sudden they're working. And that's true, right? Because we don't give ourselves structure and discipline. And ultimately, when you bring a high level of structure and discipline into your business, or you surrender to that, you can get more freedom. And ultimately, the Core is really big about building wealth too. So I was coached on every month saving 20%. If I didn't save 20%, I got put on the naughty list. Like all this stuff. So there's high discipline in the programs like that too, which is powerful, motivational for salespeople like us. But because of things like that, I've been able to grow more wealth, own more properties in multiple states, be able to own Airstream and travel the country now. So it's helped create freedom, the discipline as well.
Yeah, that is the one cool thing with the Core is they are trying to, and you've said it a couple of times, but end with a legacy. You can build wealth, but then it's how do you create a legacy? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're kind of in that phase right now.
Yeah, it's weird because when you're not in there, you're like, I'm never gonna get there. And you said that, like, I feel like I'm never gonna, be able to, regain my schedule and all these things. And we all go through that, but it all of a sudden happens. For a while you're just trying to make money and get your career going. And then for a while you have a bunch of stuff and a great business going on, and then you're like, what do I do now? Like, what else is there to impart on the world? And and that's so it's been neat to come through that journey.
As a very successful professional woman, how have you balanced home life and work? And I know it's not ever a perfect balance, but what are maybe some of the things that you've tweaked or adjusted to excel at home and at the office?
Well, I think you have to be not be afraid to spend money where you need to if you're trying to manage a big thing. Like what I mean by that is you need to have a house cleaner and you need to use Instacart even though it costs you a little bit more. Like all these little things that help save time out of your day. You need to have like I said, a lot of structure and organization. I think definitely having somebody to help keep the accountability in place too is a big part of that, because we all can stray very easily from what we want to do. So yeah, I would say the accountability, not only to a coach or something like that, but when you hire people, hey, are you accountable to them? Yeah, because guess what, their families, income is on the line now too, and so you have to be taking on more responsibility, not being afraid to take on risk, hiring people where you need to in your business, not being afraid to let go of certain parts of it. That just to give you an example, I always had my own processor, and I hired them and I paid them, but all this stuff, and we let go of that this last fall and adapted into a team that was another Core coaches ops team, and it's working out great. It's been a great transition. It's less management time for me, less so there's pros and cons to giving up things sometimes, and we think we need to hang on to everything because we're control freaks as well, but that's a good thing. It's a good thing. You have to be a control freak if you're a good loan officer.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
But you also need to learn, like, if somebody can do something 70% as good as me, and it allows me to do the things that are going to get me to that next place, then I have to be okay with that too. Yeah. And or the client, like right now, if I'm not transparent with my past clients that want to do something, or their kids want to do something, and I don't give them the level of service they are expecting, then they're just going to be unhappy. So we have to be transparent about where we're at and where the client's at, or demands of life or whatever.
Yeah, we've asked that question of work-life balance to just about every guest, and the one, I think it was 1 or 2 guests ago, there was like there's not a balance, but the balance changes throughout time. So there's not ever a perfect balance. It's how are you balancing in that time of your life with where you're at with your family and business. And
Can I share a perfect example? My wife has taken our 4 children down to Southern California, so they're down in Newport right now. I will be joining them on Saturday morning, spending a few days down there. This is the first time in over 2 years that I have been home alone without wife and 1 or more children, right? I'm scrolling through my phone towards the end of the evening, and I see a social media post. And the post, I'm trying to summarize it here, says, if you're in that stage of life where you come home from work and you see the craft project that got started and the kid left not cleaned up, you see the crumbs and peanut butter and jelly that's been smeared on the counter from a snack that was made and not cleaned up. You have the Matchbox cars with the race thing that was played with and not cleaned up before they moved on to the next activity. You have the TV on that no one's watching, the Alexa that has music playing, and kids yelling over the top so they could hear each other. There will come a time that you'll come home to a clean kitchen, no toys out, and silence. And you will long for that. Well, of course, when I'm reading this on a couch by myself going, it's eerily quiet in my home.
It's like they knew everyone is away.
I miss my children. I want them here with me right now. And it just kind of sunk in that what I was feeling on that couch that day is what I'm going to be feeling fast forward, 10, 15 years from now. I got to do the math on my youngest, right? But it's one of those, enjoy it even though it may suck. Yeah. There may be things you dislike because there's going to come a moment that you miss. Now, the other thought that I have is sometimes I feel like the egos that we have, that you talked about earlier, the production, the units, the volume that we were doing, it's been kind of a hard shift to go, doing $2-3 million, you might feel like a rock star right now, where just a couple of years ago that was kind of a sad month. Mm-hmm. So shifting that, I can always make more money later as well. Like, don't let the big life events with your family and your kids pass you by, because those you can't make more of later, or at least the odds of making it more later diminishes. It just was really impactful with me sitting on the couch last night.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, a big thing for me too is, like, I think we have those defining moments, right, in our life. And a big defining moment for me, obviously my kids kind of both left the house, but also I lost my sister at the same time, and it made me realize, like, how many things I wish I could have had back, and I think that it started to change, what I was focused on, and I started to see that, the business is always going to be there. Like, people will always need homes. And in fact, we're going to have probably another rush coming. There will be these ebbs and flows of the business. I've been doing it long enough to see a bunch of them. And so I've just learned now to be like, it's okay if I'm going to do less. And honestly, that wasn't something that I ever was okay with personally. I just, last fall when I was going through all this, I went to like a Keller Williams team meeting, just kind of like an agent invited me to go and listen in. And we had coffee after, and one of the agents said, I gave myself permission to do less deals this year. And I was like, what? Like, that was unheard of for me. And I was like, I've never really given myself permission to do less. Like said, I'm just not going to do more. And like, I've always wanted to do more. And of course we do. We're sick, twisted people in this industry. And, but sometimes you forget, like, why are you doing it? Like, you're doing it, what's the big why, right? And
so we all have our whys, right? We have our dream boards, we have where we want to go. But how much of that is the driver versus just comparing ourselves to others? Knowing that Sean just had a $5 million month, man.
Right.
It's been a lot of months since I've had a $5 million month.
You have to be careful of that. There was a time where I blocked every person in the industry. I mean, almost like, like just turned them off, silenced them for a little while. They didn't want to block them or, not be friends or whatever. But, I couldn't see it for a little while at times, and you have to be careful of that too. And like, where does your mind go? And like, does it take you away or from where you're going, and
comparison is a thief of joy. I remember there's one loan officer that will be unnamed, that I always looked at their production, and they were always more than me. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how much my numbers were growing, I was always chasing them. And I remember just wondering, man, this person, like, what are they doing in their life? Because I feel like I'm giving everything I've got, and I just can't keep up. And then I started comparing my home life compared to their home life, and married and divorced a couple times, and estranged from children, and you start realizing like, oh, I gotta stop focusing on comparing the numbers. There's way more of the iceberg under the water. I still struggle as a loan officer admitting it, how to block that out and stop comparing it. Be happy with where you're at and your own challenges. Stop comparing yourself to other LOs.
Yeah, I mean, I think to it I always wanted to be, to get to a certain place. And when you start to win all the awards that you really wanted to win for so long, and then you're like, and then you get it for another year, and you're like, I don't know. It's like, it just, it can be like, what else? What's next? And I think once you reach a certain place in your career, that's where you do reach that legacy place, and you're kind of like, well, what else do I do? Like, I love changing people's lives, and I love helping them, and how do I take this to the next level and keep on doing that in a new way?
Yeah, so with giving yourself permission, like, what did that look like to you?
It meant me being okay with telling people I wouldn't be back in Minnesota all the time, because that was like a big thing. Like, I don't know, it's a Midwest thing, maybe not so much in other parts of the country, but like, people, they get a little bit like, I wouldn't get as many leads sometimes when I was down in Florida for too long. It was like this, like, well, she had down there having fun when it's -30. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to be careful of that, right? In our industry.
I'm going to punish her.
If you want. And I was at the time trying to hit, 7,500 leads a month. We're talking about extreme numbers here where that stuff matters, and now. But anyway, so, so I gave myself permission to say we're at this place in my life where I've done a lot of things, and I'm happy with where I'm at, and I need. And again, to your point, like, you look around and you go, well, does that person have a good marriage or a good, and what do you really want at the end of the day, and making sure that you're making that a priority too. And for me, that was part of it. If my husband and I are going to keep on growing lives apart, as busy people in multiple states, that's not really going to be a marriage later down the line, probably. So making some decisions that, hey, not everybody's happy with, but they have to be made, because sometimes it is like, what do you want to work?
I find that some real estate agents can be so funny in their decision making, right? On when to send a lead and when not to. I got into a bad habit in COVID, not attending closings. So it's been something I've been trying to recommit this year of making sure I'm to as many as possible, but at the same time, there's stuff that I'm going to miss. And I remember asking an agent, why did we stop working together? And it came down to the amount of closings I went to diminished. And it's one of those,
yeah.
I had no idea it was that big of a deal for that agent. You would think closing early ahead of schedule, all of everything else, getting it to the finish line without any drama would be more important than the closing. And just a reminder, go to your closings.
Well, and I mean, you run into that with realtors that, like, you do everything right, and still that isn't enough for them. And so sometimes it's like everybody has different expectations, and, frankly, we even get caught up in that sometimes ourselves as a consumer or a partner, a business thing ourselves. And, we just have to remember we're all trying to do a job together and work towards the same goal. And, yeah, I think for the realtors too, the ones that have, known me for a really long time, and they know, like, this is Amber's going to take great care of them wherever she is. She's going to be there when we need her to, and her team is awesome to work with every single time. So when you develop a systems and structure like that, it makes it easier to be.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say is your referral partners know that you take ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of clients that are realtor. You know, a lot of my realtors are also clients of mine. So I think that you know is, they trust me. They know where I'm at, and
I feel like at least my referral partners give you a little bit longer leash when they know. I don't care that you're out of the office for 2 or 3 days, or I'm an avid hunter and I'm off grid for a week, because they know that my team and I are going to perform regardless of what my personal schedule is. But it takes time to build that trust for them to know, keep sending them. We're going to keep knocking them out of the park. Yeah,
and I would say, you know, you have juniors be involved with your clients, with your realtors. Like, some people get scared of, like, don't let this person call my realtors, or, you know what I mean, like, on your team. And it's like, they have to get to know and like your team too, for that to become better for you someday. So you have to be okay with that and find the right people and coach them well. Like, in this business too, we often hire people and send them out into the world without enough coaching or education or shadowing. So, yeah.
Well, very cool. And we're just at about an hour. In closing, I did just want to highlight and hit on social media marketing.
Yeah.
So that's how we actually got in contact.
Yeah.
Was through social media. Not only do we work at the same company, but your social media game has definitely ramped up. Have you kind of focused when you had, when your sister passed away and you kind of took a step back, was social media something you wanted to ramp up? Or walk us through kind of what took you to that next level and
so
why
I
you're
think
focusing on it?
Probably 6 years ago is when I started doing consistent video, and that looked like me sending out a weekly email to realtors. Every single realtor we did already worked with, and I knew and could put it on that list, and then every transaction we did, we added to that. And every single Friday I sent them a video that was either about a product, hey, this is a script I just learned from another coach in the core that's working really well for them or their team to generate stuff or to convert people, whatever it was, tip, trick, something that was cool. And then I would always attach over like the mortgage daily commentary, which is just like, it kind of says the market information for them to know and be able to talk to their clients at a higher level. And that was just something I started doing consistently, and from there it's grown. I think another big thing I did along the way was become a part of the American Dream family about 3.5 years ago. It's a TV show. It's being produced by mortgage and real estate professionals in the local markets. And it's about all the positive things that happen in our communities that we want people to know about, that frankly the industry is showcases a lot of really great things and can help connect kind of back to the clients in different ways. It's that plus elevating our social game. I mean, a lot of people look on social media and they need to see that you have a social presence. It's not the only thing that will get you business, and it's probably not something that will get you a lot of business, strictly. But it's something important to be a part of. And I think more so, now it's more a personal social media approach for me that I'm trying to gravitate into, because that's what social media is. Like, I think in our industry we've confused it and used it as a marketing platform, and like our customers that end up following us or being friends with us don't want to just see about every closing. They want to know like what's going on with us, because ultimately they work with us because they liked us, and so it's like it's fun to use social media in that way too, to continue to stay in touch with people that ultimately you'll probably help again someday.
Yeah, your post I saw yesterday on a really cool motorcycle on the hill of the old airport road with the St. George and Dixie Rock in the background. I don't even remember what the post said, but it had a ton of engagement.
Yeah.
And it was just about you personally, and people see that and connect. Like, it can be so simple,
I think for a long time, I think you want to show up in our industry and like have everybody like you and work with you and choose you, and that can be hard too, because you forget to be just who you are, and sometimes and ultimately that's I guess, yeah, I mean, it's gravitating, right? It's the emotional connection that we're all longing for ultimately. Like, when people do, let's just say they see that stuff and then they decide to work with me, hopefully that's mirroring what they're getting, you know, too. But
yeah, the cool thing I like that Ben does, he does an event every year and he takes realtors out to like a shooting range, and they do like clay pigeon shooting. And I remember after one of the first ones, one of the top realtors in the area is like, this is how you treat realtors, and like tag Ben and the team. And it's like, man, it really, you can go a lot deeper with people if you are who you are and do the things you like and show up that way.
If I can add to that comment, when I first got in the business, I thought I had to force myself to like golf.
Yeah. I remember I learned how to play golf working at a bank. I never played golf.
So I started going to play on a regular basis, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like it, and I felt like I tried to force myself for 3 or 4 years, and there was just this one day going, just stop taking the invitation from title companies to go golfing. Stop feeling like you have to take your referral partners golfing. Take them to do things that you like. It was like this moment, right? That I was like, there's going to be enough people out there that are just like me that would rather go shoot guns or fish rather than go golfing. And I found that to be true, that it's different. It's not as mainstream. So
yeah, and I feel like the longer you're in the business, the more you I don't know, the more you give yourself permission to be that way.
Yeah, to be your authentic self.
Yeah. And then more people are attracted, and then the bonds are deeper, and that just creates this snowball. And then the next thing you know, you're on an Airstream in St. George, Utah on a podcast.
I never expected to be here, guys.
I think this is awesome. Now I'm looking forward to go following you on social media.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and hopefully if you're out there and in the grind, it's just stay doing what you're doing. There was many months where I didn't close any deals, and I just kept on doing what I was doing and hustling, and it takes off at some point. And then you look back 20 years from now and your kids are gone and you have those moments, but it's fun.
So if anyone who's listening to this podcast and wants to get a hold of you, how do they contact you?
Yeah, so they can go Instagram at @THEE_Amber_G. Nobody can spell or say Garofalo really well. And then on there, if you do want to connect with me, I do have a link to my Calendly and my Flow code page that you can schedule something right on my calendar, and that's limited right now because of the hours that I'm working for the next few months. But I do have, anybody can schedule a call with me at any point in time. Love to connect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming. It's been a fun conversation, and I've got some good takeaways that will leave me pondering some things that I can tweak and adjust, not only as a manager but as an originator. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me.